All right, so the last thing that you'll have to do, if you haven't done it already in this, is show the color separations for the different pages that you're creating. This is another thing that a lot of designers don't know how to do because it's usually the printer that does this process in the project. But it's good to know what's going on whenever a printer asks you, hey, can you do color separations, or hey, can you check the ink saturation on everything from here. So once you've got your document all laid out, it's going to ask you to open up your separations preview toolbox. You can find this under Window, Output and Layout. Excuse me, not Output. There it is, Output. Under Color Separations. What this will show you is, right now by default it's usually turned off. You can turn it to Separations. It's going to look exactly the same, but it's going to show you what does it look like for each of the plates that will be made when it's sent off to a printing press. Keep in mind, when you send something to a printing press, it doesn't print off like your regular inkjet printer in that it has one big ink cartridge. You're actually going to make a huge metal plate, and that's going to have to pick up ink and lay it down on the paper, and it's going to have to do it in a specific order. So that's what these different separations are. If you click on any of the eyeball icons on the right-hand side, you can turn on and off the different colors that are here. If I clicked on just the CMYK, it'll automatically turn off all the CMYK images that are on this picture. Now I clicked on those, and some of the pictures went away. Why did those pictures go away, but the other ones remain?
Those are the ones that use the CMYK values, while the other ones use some spot color.
Yeah, exactly, a spot color. Remember, a spot color isn't a mixture of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It's just that color. Like literally, they order that color from a company. So when they order that specific spot of red, there's going to be an entire plate that lays down just that color red. Same way for the yellow, same way for the blue if you had the blue version pulled up. So when it sends this off to the press, that particular shade of red is going to be on its own indication by itself. If you turned off all the other spot colors, notice that it will turn Pantone color whatever black. This is what you would send to a printer to make the plates. It's literally called a plate maker. All it deals with is black and white, and so it's going to burn this image into some of the larger ones. Do metal plates. You can actually do it's called vellum. It's kind of like a plastic that you can burn it into to do smaller runs. But it only deals with black and white. So whatever is black, that's going to pick up the ink. Whatever is white, it's going to be washed away and not picked up at all. And this kind of gives you the idea for doing those type of separations. You can even turn on, say, I just wanted to see what the cyan plate will look like. So you can see the darker areas that are going to be very blue, picks up a lot of color, versus the lighter areas, which take on less cyan. I think, let me zoom in and see if it'll show. It won't show it. I know in Photoshop and in some of them you can zoom in and actually see the points that are inside this. This won't do that for there. Same way for magenta, if you need to see what it looks like. If you want to see what just the cyan and just the magenta will look like together, this is one way you can turn on each individual one and then finally turn on the black layer and see what the full color looks like. Used to, you had to do these for each and every one. Hey, come on. By hand. I love that the computer can do this all at once as well. The last thing you can do is turn on what's called trapping. Trapping is another, let me turn everything back on, is another kind of term that you don't know about it until something goes wrong. Have you ever looked at a newspaper and noticed that maybe an image is off by a little bit? It looks a little blurry, the colors, looks like something's gone wrong with it. That's because the trapping on it has literally the plate has shifted just a little bit. When you're working on huge machines, not everything goes right. And when you want to get something printed that's so small, you're talking like thousandths of an inch difference. And it's just really hard to set up a plate perfectly. So what trapping does, if you click on Trap Presets, it adds a little bit of a lip. It takes whatever color that you have. So I'll pull up another. Say you had this. These are two different Pantone colors. So I've got Pantone for green and Pantone for yellow. And if I zoom in, if I printed this off just a little bit, if I printed off and the green color was off by a little bit, you'd see a white line develop underneath there. That's because the plate got off. Well, what trapping does is, under the trap presets, it will, when it does the color separation, it'll add just a little bit more room on this side to the green plate, and it'll add just a little bit more room on the other side to the yellow plate, so that when they print, they overlap. Does that make sense? Y'all understand why it's doing that? It's so that if it is off, it'll still print perfectly through there. You can click on the default, and this is just kind of the default setting. Actually, I changed that one up. Usually, trapping is much lower than that. It's, I think by default it can be as much as 1/1000th of an inch on the black border from there as well. I tried to think of a really good example where you would see it. How many of y'all have eaten a Little Caesars pizza before? You know, $5, go in, pick it up. Next time you're in Little Caesars, look at the box. Look how it's been printed off. You'll see they've got two colors on there. They've got black and they've got their orange that's on there. You can see where it's overlapping. They have a huge trapping. It's like 1/4 of an inch. You can see where the ink is overlapping each other. The reason why is they're printing those boxes off super fast. They get it as cheap as possible, so they do millions of them a day. And so they're printing so fast, they don't want to stop it. They just said, okay, give us a lot of trapping, and if it's off by a little bit, that's okay. And so it's overlapping by that much trapping on there. Next time you're in there, look for that. That's what's going on. That's why they do that as well. The last thing to look at under color separations is, what was it? Oh, it was your ink presets. Excuse me, for your ink limit. Let me jump back over to our toy preset. Under separations, the last one is the ink limit. This is going to show you how much ink is being laid down onto a piece of paper. So if you turn that one on, you can see there's a little bit of red areas. Everything turns gray, and you can look on different areas. This is where the ink limit is over, in our case, 300%. So how do you get 300% of ink? Well, this is how it works. Remember when you create a color, I'm going to open up our color picker. You're typing in a mixture of C, M, Y, and K. I'm about to sneeze, 1 second. Okay. So if I typed in a mixture of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, I can, 50% cyan, 20% magenta, 20% yellow, and 90% black gives me a very, very dark color. If I drop that down to, say, 10%, a little bit lighter as well. Well, that's how much ink coverage you're talking about. If I typed in 100%, so a full thing of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, you're putting down a lot of ink, a lot of cyan, a lot of magenta, a lot of yellow, and a lot of black. Well, what color does that produce? Yeah, straight black. You don't have to have 100% cyan, magenta, and yellow just to have black. You can still have none of it on there, and you still got the same color, still black as well. Well, a lot of people, when they choose their colors, you can get a richer black by adding in a little bit of cyan or a little bit of magenta, like 50% on each one, and then a whole lot of black on top of that. It just becomes more rich. Here's where it's important for your color separations and for the printing process. Some papers can absorb more ink than other papers. So if you have a really, really thin bit of paper and you're putting a lot of ink onto that paper, what's it gonna do? It's gonna come very wet, it's gonna wash off. You don't wanna have a lot of ink on a thinner paper. But if you've got a really thick paper and you put a little bit of ink on it, it's not gonna soak in very well. It's gonna look washed out. So this is what, when you turn on your ink limit, anything that's above 300%, in other words, any of the CMYK values, if it adds up to more than 300%, that's where it's going to tell you, hey, you may have an ink problem on this particular paper. When you work with a printer and you start ordering your cardstock, or you start ordering whatever type of paper you want, they can tell you, hey, this is a thicker cardstock. It can take on 300% or less type of ink. You got some presets on here as well. 280 is kind of the standard if you're printing off on just regular copy paper. So if I was to print this, you can see it's going to start to get really, really wet and not binding to the paper on these particular areas. Some of the higher end ones, so if I was printing this on a bond type paper, 400%, that's not going to give me any problems at all. You can see, wherever I move on here, the ink's just going to be easily absorbed from there. And that's what the ink limit allows you to do from that. Sometimes if you send work to a printer, they'll say, hey, can you adjust your ink limit or can you adjust your CMYK because it's going to bleed too much. They'll require you to do that. Some of the modern printers, especially if they have a digital press, they can fix this for you and make the adjustments on the fly. That's what pre-press does. So if you ever work for a pre-press, that's a lot of ways to do it. Question?
How would you make the adjustments to color? Like, say you saw how it was on top of the picture of the girl.
You would have to open it up in Photoshop and yeah, either in Photoshop and make the color corrections, and there's also a way you can do it in what is it? Adobe Acrobat. When you make a PDF, you can change the adjustments from there. I've never done it before, so I wish I could tell you specifically. But I know there is a way in pre-flight for Acrobat. I'll look that up and I'll actually show you next time to be able to do that. So that's what you're going to do before you save this last one, is kind of know the limits of the different inks that are being printed and also show the separations for each one once it goes through there. Any questions about this? Today's going to be a work day to finish up this project and any other projects that you have, and we'll move on to a personal project next week. All right, turn your computers back over to you.